time for Jerome Powell to turn off the printing presses and stop QE. Mr. Jerome Powell might want to consider stopping the printing presses. Powell, hear me out. You have a chance to be great, possibly change the course of history for the better. Don't be like every other Fed chair and kick the can down the road. Yes, there'll be some short-term pain, but now is the time to be creative and be different. What do you think, folks? I'm just looking at this from a different angle. I've talked to some local economists, some Ivy bankers. I read every day. You know, I got a little skin in the game. Maybe Powell should consider the country over his career. He's up for reappointment soon. Change will not happen when you want to be liked by everyone. You want about 90% of people to hate you and 10% to like you. If everyone likes you, you're not doing your job. So if he shuts down the fire hose and returns to sound economic policies, the markets will tank and take the economy with him. This is necessary to restore fiscal sanity, in my opinion. Just as I talked about the other day, just as the withdrawal symptoms of a drug addict are required to regain the victim's health, maybe we would be, have a better balanced Democrat and Republican Party. No more one-party rule on both sides. We know Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer play tennis together. Maybe we need some more checks and balances. They all seem to be going away. The markets definitely will be relieved not to be under constant threat from whoever whimsical notion, pops into some politician's head on K Street that given day. So I think the Fed needs to be the counterpunch. They're supposed to be, from my research, the Fed is supposed to be the counterpunch to the excesses. If we are to harness our wealth, present trend has deviated from that path. We should have cut back, in my opinion, 6-7 months ago, frankly, the minute folks started going back to work. Well, hindsight's 2020, sort of hoping DC puts some more formalized walls in place to minimize future arm twisting. Also, anyone worried about keeping that job should not stay past their term. He wants to stay past his term. He hasn't taken a stance on that publicly, but, I've heard otherwise. So what is independence? Everyone talks, we're independent. And therefore, that's a tough job to find the right candidate for because they're all politicized. I never predicted a day when I'd hope for higher interest rates. Maybe we need them. It shows how political the whole Fed policy has become, in my opinion. Nonetheless, like I said, the Fed still claims it's independency. We're independent. We got no skin in the game. Sure, it sure does not look like, even when mainline publications are saying, I quote, the Fed shouldn't allow financial markets or the White House to back them into a corner into continuing the easy money policies that could lead to steep recession or stagflation. Mainline publications across the board, they can't hide it anymore. So in August 2020, the Fed announced that it would give priority to maximum employment and no longer act preemptively to stem inflation. So it would accept a period of inflation greater than 2% to compensate for the undershooting the target in the 2010s. But the Fed has been vague about how much overshooting is tolerable. So they've been a little vague right now, maybe purposely. So since end of March, April, the annualized pace of month-over-month CPI, CPI inflation has been about 8.7%. It should be attributed merely to a rebound in pandemic-depressed prices for, as we all know, let's say airline tickets, rental and used cars, hotel rooms, supply chain problems, the big issue right now with the computer chip, severe shortages of workers, manufacturing, transportation, climate change impacts on agricultural productivity. problems in the global transportation and the cost of shifting, trying to go to this carbon-free technology environment. So one thing, I don't take a stance. We were energy independent in the last administration. Now we got some issues. So private economists, inflation forecasts keep rising. All the economists I'm talking to and reading, they keep rising. The Fed's policy change is anchored in the view that if it tightened too quickly in the past and denied workers the opportunity to enjoy a seller's labor market and bargain for higher pay. So bottom line is the Fed raised interest rates. This is a good point. The Fed raised interest rates in June 2004 to June 2006 and from December 2015 to December 2018. During both episodes, the unemployment rate continued to fall. It continued to fall. And by June 2019, the unemployment reached 3.6%. We know that's skewed. But Powell let Donald Trump, I got no skin in the game, I'm calling out both sides. Powell let Donald Trump bully him into stopping the tightening process. Now economists at the current administration, Joe Biden, at the Biden White House, have a preference for accommodative. They have a preference for accommodative policies. And Powell's up for reappointment. So he's going in there, handing out the candy, making some deals, So if he leans against growing sentiment among members of the Federal Open Market Commission to announce a plan to taper by the end of the year, the appearance of pressure from the West Wing economists and their supporters will be salient. So are things going to change? I talked to one of my economist friends in the West Coast. He's a baller. He's got a nice 10-year job in a nice institution. And he said the Fed funds rate has typically averaged between 4 to 6%. And Powell should take it to 6% immediately and let the short-term chips fall where they may. Speculators like me would be ruined. Goodbye cryptocurrencies. 1% of my income in crypto. Not much, but I play. But in the long run, investors, companies, and workers will all be better off, in his opinion. Within a year, it would be water under the bridge, and the economy would be bolstered by a return to normalcy. I trust him. He's a good guy. Gives me some heartburn. So this game of robbing Peter to pay Paul, which happens in a lot of industries, has gone on far too long. And look at the mess it's created. Everything it was intended to improve has gotten worse than it was when this whole thing was set into motion. So there's a lot of dead wood in this economy, and it needs to be chopped out like a cancer. If rates had been rising and bonds left to find their level after the financial crisis, the economy would be humming long before now. So since that spoonful of honey time is no longer available, it's no longer available for us right now, it's time to hold our collective noses and taste the vile tasting medication. So, printing money, from my research, doesn't take a rocket scientist. Printing money to purchase assets makes little sense under conditions of relative tranquility and raises serious risks. So it is cheaper for the U.S. taxpayer to finance expenditures by issuing bonds than by printing money. Now, Mike said, and I like this quote, Mike said, QE is bad fiscal policy, but it is the only way DC can finance its endless wish list. The Fed is hoping one bad policy will cancel out the other. It won't. Bottom line from my research, yes, financing for money creation, economists call it, I wrote it down for you, seigniorage. Seigniorage is feasible whenever the yield of money is below that of government bonds. But as the central bank prints more and more money, it must pay higher and higher interest rates on that money to ensure that the commercial banks and the public will want to hold it. So Tom said QE should be a lesson to all about, adding tools to the government's playbook at times of crisis. QE was sold to us as a temporary measure for extreme emergency of the 2008 debt crisis. Tom said, and he quotes Ronald Reagan, the closest thing, as Ronald Reagan said, the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government program. Sooner or later, the interest rate gap closes and there is no more seigniorage to be had. If the central bank keeps printing money beyond this point, the private sector will begin dumping it, causing currency depreciation and inflation, or possibly both. So it's a serious problem, and I like, printing's great. It's been good for me, but we need to look at the holistic picture of this and think long term. And it's not good for your children. It's ruined. They're ruined. Generation X, millennials, you're screwed. It's game over. It's game over for you. So you need to look at the long term, and I'm just trying to shed some light on it. I think there's a lot of greed out there, and everyone's been too greedy. And you got to worry about the big picture for the entire country and world, what's going on. Just look at these things. It's interesting when you look at all these pieces and how they work. And I do a lot of research on it, and it's caused me to think about different things, and it's concerning. So just want to share that. Be creative and kind. Ciao.